Oh my goodness. I am so freaking excited. I get to have Sarah Foley, you on the podcast today. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited we get to do this. We've been chatting about it for a hot minute, and here
I
we
know. I know. Thank you for saying yes to coming on your first fertility podcast, right?
are. First, we never forget our first.
Oh my gosh. And you were born for what you do. You are a leader on stage in your life and the way you live your life. I've followed you online for some time and we're connected in some circles, learning about speaking and mastering in our craft as I'm stepping out into being a speaker more, which I admire you so much. Yeah, I just am so excited for this talk because what you've been through is a story that I think all of us can learn from you, your wisdom. And I'm just so honored that you're here.
Thank you so much. And I love, it gave me goosebumps when you said that I was born for what I do. And I
Mm.
think that, I can sum it up in so many ways, but it's like, yes, we will be led to what we're meant to do, but not always in the way that we think it's going to go, and in very unexpected packages and very unexpected detours. And but if
Yeah.
we always come back to, what am I supposed to give through this, or how am I supposed to fit into this in a way that feels really true to me? And it's pretty cool what we can create.
Mm, 100%. I know you're based in Salt Lake City. Is that right?
I am.
And your life, I've followed your background a bit, and from being a massage therapist to working in a spa to moving to different parts of the country. And, I would just love for you to highlight what happened in 2012 was a very significant experience for you and shifted, catapulted you into this whole new identity. If you could just kind of take us back a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. And even as I think it's relevant, um,
Mm.
I got into massage therapy simply as a means to pay the bills, because my dad was very much like, make sure you can always pay your bills. But the quest was actually to go out to LA and become an actress and go to Hollywood and do the TV thing. And
Mm.
my massage therapy career ended up taking me to Palm Springs, where I landed the lead host job on a local television show. And I did that for many years. And and I very much felt called to that. You give me a microphone or a camera or a stage, and I am more at home there than anywhere else. And yet, the kind of television it was like Entertainment Tonight for the Valley. So a lot of entertainment news, but a lot of superficial news, if I could put it lightly.
Uh-huh.
And so I craved more depth, and I also craved having a story of my own. I was here interviewing all these other people, and I craved just an element of depth. And
Mhm.
that actually took me out of television, because I felt like this is too superficial. It felt very cutthroat, very like, you're just this
Mhm.
friends with this person because they just want to get ahead. And there was just so much of that, and I hated that. And so that
Mhm.
took me back into the spa world, where I mean, understanding massage therapy and then how to manage massage therapists, and understanding, how emotionally driven people are, and figuring out leadership and running a business, and all of this, that they all these pieces, I didn't understand how they would come together later in life. So back to that trust
Mhm.
element. And it was while I was a spa director up in Park City, when things just completely changed in 2012. Yeah. And so
Yeah.
um, to to keep it quick, just for
No.
account of time, but I mean, it was a very long and crazy experience. But I was out on four wheelers with a new boyfriend of mine, and I took a turn, and I hit a ditch, and I flipped over on that four wheeler and became paralyzed instantly from the rib cage down. You can't really tell here on video, and when I'm sitting down, some people have
Mhm.
no idea, and then I come rolling into a room in a wheelchair. So it's now
Mhm.
been obviously 12 years, and have still not walked. And I really thought I'd walk out of the hospital. I really just, that like things like this don't happen to people like me, that kind of mindset around it. Like, of course I'm going to be fine. Why wouldn't I? This stuff doesn't
Yeah.
happen to me. I thought I was a good person. I thought all these things. And little did I know, though, that I really do think that it set me up for the path I was meant to walk on.
Mm.
And, I went back to work pretty quickly, but it was very much like, I don't belong in this role anymore. I don't belong. There's something
Mm.
bigger. And yet first I got to do some major healing.
Yeah.
And that healing journey actually ended up taking us to Maui. And it ended up getting married and having a little boy and so forth. And my husband at
Mm.
the time, he had gotten a job transfer there to Maui and followed our way over there. And man, does that place have the most insane healing energy.
Wow.
Just healers, and the land and the culture and everything about it is just so healing. And I was really faced with every part of my old identity was now gone. My job was now gone. My old life was gone. The way I saw my body was, everything was gone. And it was this absolute clean slate. And I remember moving there, and about a month into it, I just said, I am opening myself up to healing. I'm opening
Mm.
myself up to healers. And they came in all shapes and sizes, from therapy to women's circles to,
Mm.
saluting the moon on moonrise. I mean, just like all kinds of crazy things. The energy work that I received, and learning
Mm.
about nutrition and dancing and all the things you could
Yeah.
imagine. And you had mentioned this identity and this version of myself that I created.
Mm.
Um, so it actually began with my therapist, who I call my medicine woman. She was very unconventional therapy, a lot of really cool things we did in her office. But she worked in this kind of therapy called IFS, so internal family system. They sometimes call it parts work. Um,
Mm.
if anyone's not familiar with it, Gabby Bernstein wrote a really good book called Happy Days, and it discusses it a lot more in depth. Really
Mm.
good book, I recommend.
That's great.
And I just, you learn about these different parts of yourself, but at the center of it all is like the core self of who you really are. And when you quiet all these other parts, the parts that feel broken or ashamed or guilt or resentment or all these different parts of us, and you really just get in tune with, who am I
Mm.
really? And without limit and pure possibility and pure love, and just this essence of who we are.
Mm.
And during this time, it all coincided together. My family back home in Utah was asking me to keep them up to date on my healing progress. And so I thought, well, I'll just start a blog and I'll just kind of write my stories. And I just knew instinctually that whatever I called this blog would have a radical effect on life or business or something. But I just knew that really instinctually. And I came up with Vertical Blonde.
Yeah.
And Vertical Blonde started as just a cutesy name for the blog. And this is truly what helped me form my identity, because I thought, okay, who is Vertical Blonde? Like, and who am I at my total core beautiful self? And what if Vertical Blonde was that self? And I got to decide who she was. I got to decide the values, the dreams, the parts of me that I really wanted to bring out and highlight and magnify. And I created her. And then this identity work really started to take root. And I even went to a Tony Robbins event around that time as well. And he takes people through this process. And I was like, oh my gosh, I already did that. Like, I was a
Mm.
genius. I didn't even know it. Here we go.
Mm.
And so I had already done all this work. And so what happens is that I started to use Vertical Blonde as like this true north. Like, what would she do in this scenario? How would she respond? What would she eat? How would she talk to her body? All these things. And then that is like, all of a sudden became who I was, and I became aligned with that version. So Vertical Blonde, she saved my life. She is
Mhm.
me at my most beautiful, highest potential. And I'll wrap with this, because I think it's always so important. It's my favorite Hawaiian word. I've got a lot of favorites. This
Yeah.
one's the very favorite, and it's kuleana. And our kuleana is our God-given, purest responsibility to be the very best version of ourselves. And the kicker of it is, and this is the part I think that a lot of people miss when we become our best self, is that you have to do it for the pursuit of your own well-being first. And then that will overflow to others, and then it overflows to the world. But a lot of us want to go help others to be our best selves when behind closed doors, it doesn't align, or we want to go change the world, and yet we don't feel aligned with that. And so it has to come in its purest form for ourselves first, so that we can really help that come to fruition.
Gosh. Wow. I mean, taking us through your whole story, and it's like going back to what that ditch represented when you fell in that ditch. And I think this is something that those who are listening, who are maybe really on a fertility path, finding themselves like literally in the trenches and in this ditch of this hole of like, am I going to get out of this? Or how am I going to get out of this? And I'm imagining you looking up and just like, okay, how am I going to move forward through this? And all of us are going through challenging things, whether you're on a fertility path or not. I mean, you physically were flipped upside down. Your whole life got turned upside down. And for many who are on a fertility path, that's how we feel. I've gone through it, and it's like our lives are turned upside down. And I just appreciate the storytelling that you bring, sharing your perspective, because we don't need to let that be the defining part of our lives. And you stepped in and decided, I'm going to reclaim my life. And it didn't happen overnight. We want to be clear. Like this took, I think you said 4 years, I've heard. It was like,
Well,
it was
I was in
many years.
the denial phase for 4 years.
Yeah.
Like I didn't want to face it for 4 years. And I
Yeah.
did this where I'm like, I'm great. Everything's fine. Everything happens for a reason. And I was like, I
Wow.
say my voice was like stuck in my own throat.
Oh.
I didn't believe my own words. And so, and behind closed doors, it reflected that. There was depression, there was suicidal thoughts, many nights. Like I just I didn't understand how this could happen or what I'm supposed to do with it.
Yeah.
And I'll say this because you brought up the ditch, and at this moment in my life was just like, whoa, this one just hit hard. So I ended up getting to be a guest on the Mel Robbins show when she
Wow.
had her TV show. And the show that I was on was all about forgiveness. And up until this point, I was like, yeah, I've forgiven Sean, because the part that I didn't really talk about was the man that I ended up married, who was my boyfriend at the time. We're still good friends. We're not married anymore, but great friends. And it was because we were avoiding each other on the four-wheeler. But
Yeah.
he went on up ahead on the trail to make sure it was safe. And his other friend waved me up kind of the hill, and I didn't realize that Sean was coming down. So I went around the bend, and in order to avoid him, I flipped and hit the ditch.
Oh my gosh.
Now, the guilt that Sean has carried has been crazy, and his own ditch to deal with, right? Like we've all got our own ditches, no matter what side of the street we're on. But I harbored a lot of resentment, never said it to the outside world, never admitted it to anybody else. But if I had anything go wrong, I fell out of my chair, my bowels weren't working correctly, I couldn't, do something, couldn't get in somewhere, I always blamed him in my head. If he hadn't put me in this stupid chair. And so regardless if I ever say that out loud, if I've got those thoughts inside, that energy that I'm dealing with life with, like that's going to deal it right back. And so I went on this show, and she's talking about forgiveness. And have you ever like word vomited and
Yeah.
you literally can't stop and you don't know what's happened or taken over you? I literally started just word vomiting all over him on the show. I was pure blame, so much anger. I mean, it just like unleashed. And as I finally like came up for air, I will never forget this moment. Mel Robbins is just looking at me like, you poor, poor soul. Not in like, I feel bad for you, but like, I feel bad for you. Like you are, it was just a look that I'll just never forget. And she said, you're still in that ditch. And I said,
Oh,
yeah, but he put me here. Here's
oh.
the kicker. I want everyone to listen carefully, because she says, I don't care who put you there. It's your job to get yourself out.
Mm,
And it hit me like just a wildfire. That it still is like just a
mm,
gut
mm,
punch for me. And what it did was, it was like this old story was running circles around my head about why it was his fault and what's to blame and everything that's going wrong. And I'm the victim and everyone should feel bad for me and all the things. And it was this pivot of like, no, I got to own that story. That's
yeah.
on me. And I got to own my part, which also gives me the power to own my results. Like I got to
Yeah.
own my story. And I kind
Yeah.
of came up with this thing that I say of own your story or your story owns you.
Yeah. So true. So true. And I just love that you decided to come up with this new identity and moving from I can't to iconic. I love that so much. And it's like, I think those listening, we can utilize a new identity, a shift in I'm not a, how do I want to say it? I mean, there's this trying to conceive warrior mindset, which I don't like in the fertility space, I'll be honest. An unpopular opinion, like this kind of trying to conceive versus like I am a manifesting mama. Like I am empowered on my path to motherhood. I'm stepping into a new identity. And I think what you created for yourself, literally rising up um, vertically, you wanted to, yes, not physically could walk, but you're going to walk tall in life. And you've done that for yourself. Like that is such a huge monumental shift that everyone listening can utilize to recreate a new identity, a new way of being.
And we can do it at any given moment. And the real change happens when behind closed doors, when no one else is watching, you are embodying it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it comes out so real and authentically because it's truly becoming who you are.
Yeah.
Right? I always like to say there's a version of ourselves we've practiced being. We just simply practiced it. And then there's an icon in all of us.
Mm-hmm.
That iconic version of ourselves, that the I can't icon. I'm so excited. It's getting trademarked as we speak. I'm almost,
Oh, that's
which is
amazing.
just really fun. I love that.
Yeah.
And but it's this shift, right? And it's like as we make a new choice, the transformation is happening. Okay, I'm
Mm-hmm.
choosing differently. I'm choosing to think differently. I'm choosing to see this differently. I'm behaving now differently because of it. But it goes
Mm-hmm.
back to Kuliana. I got to do it for myself first. I can't
Yeah.
just put on the show and pretend like I'm doing it. Oh, I'm manifesting. I'm in the great, energy. It's
Yeah.
like, no, our energy is our currency. It is how we
It
transact with
is.
things. And our real energy is our currency, like the true energy. And if we're faking it, guess what we're going to get back? Anything that's not authentic, anything that's fake, like we're not going to
Mm-hmm.
get it back. So if we really want to conceive, whether it's an idea, a baby, like whatever it is that we're
Yeah.
trying to conceive and bring into life, we really have to energetically become it. Now, I've not dealt with IVF, so I cannot speak to that from experience. The only thing I can speak to from experience is there was a shell of a person before inside of me. Like I
Mm.
I was a walking shell. I was a
Mm.
smiling shell, but
Oh,
it was empty.
this
And
is
it was
so relatable. So
and it was,
relatable. Yeah.
yes, it was broken. It was very negative. It was very resentful. Played the victim constantly because no one could like they couldn't argue with me. It was like,
Mm.
oh yeah, I can't do that because of my disability. Oh, I
Mm.
can't go out today because of my pain. Oh, I used my disability as an excuse left and right. Almost always it was just me using as an excuse, right?
Mm.
It's this excuse that no one could argue with. And so it allowed me to continue to play the victim in it, be the victim in it, when
Yeah.
instead I started to flip it around and just say, what do I how do I want this to be? I get to redefine disability on my terms. And
Mm.
actually my first coaching business that I did, and really how I now I'm coaching other speakers that are sharing their story, but it actually started with a fitness program for female wheelchair users. And I called it Disability Icon. And I just said, you get to be the new icons for disability, change the game. It's going to look different. It's going to feel different. And I just, yeah, I think I come into a room and people are just very confused. So they're like, you don't fit any of the old molds of disability that we've known before. And I'm the one that got to call that shot. So we all have that power. We can make it whatever we want.
We do. And there's so many things you touched upon I want to go back to. I mean, it's like we can go down the blame path of like the excuses. Well, if I hadn't gone through this, then this wouldn't have happened. If we didn't have this issue, background medical history, then maybe we wouldn't have needed IV. All the things, right? And it's like we get to a place of acceptance. I've heard you talk about this, and we get to decide. Like we can start fresh. We can do a reset. And there was a quote you said that I wrote down in the area of acceptance. I want to read it to you. True acceptance is simply a release of resistance to what has happened. I heard you say that. Whatever our situation is, like, let's shift the energy. Okay. Yes, we come to a place of acceptance. And yes, there's grieving involved, because I know you went through a lot of grieving of like letting go of what your life maybe would have looked like, right? In a different way. And for so many women, I think there isn't a lot of grief on this path. There's a lot of grieving, resentment, feeling like a shell of ourselves, like all of it so relatable, everything you're sharing.
Thank you
So
so much.
yeah.
I love that idea about acceptance. It's transformative, really. And I think that for a long time, I thought acceptance meant that I had to like what happened. But actually, it's not. It's just simply accepting that right here is my starting point. I'm not trying to start in the past. I'm not trying to change what has already happened. It is that this has happened. I accept that it's happened. Now, what do I get to do with it? And I just think that a lot of our time gets spent in wishing that things were different, wishing we would have had a parent we wished we would have had, wishing that things would have gone differently, maybe wishing that our spouse would have reacted differently. We just sit there wishing that things could have been different, but they weren't. But they weren't.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, this is where you're starting. And I do believe that every moment of our lives is offering something to us. Every experience, whether it's good or bad. My therapist, medicine woman, she taught me this prayer, and I ended up adding on to it a little bit as well. But she would just say, "Dear God, thank you for the seemingly good and the seemingly bad." And then I said, because in this moment, I do not know the difference. I get to decide the difference. I'm sorry, that I get to decide the difference. Thank you for the seemingly good, seemingly bad. And in this moment, I get to decide the difference. So who's to say what's good or bad? You know, people
And we
say,
make the meaning. We make the meaning of it.
yes. People say all the time, like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry your accident happened. I say, I'm not. I'm not. I have gained so much from this. My life has become so beautiful, so meaningful, so full of depth. And I got everything I wanted. I wanted a story worth sharing. And God, what a gift.
Was your therapist the same one that did the parts work with you, that would ask you what part of you needs you right now?
We would start every session with that. I would come in, she'd give me a big hug. She had this big teethy grin. I loved her smile. And she'd close the door, lock it behind her. She had kind of a busy hallway area. And we'd sit down, and then she would just say, close your eyes. What part of you needs you right now? And it's just what part is screaming the most. And the reason why I actually started therapy was to fix my marriage. And weirdly enough, I found her because I'd gone down the list, and Maui's funny, nothing's accessible. And I literally just like went down the list. No one had a wheelchair accessible space. They were all on top floors and stairs and things. And I finally found her, and she did couples therapy and all these different kinds of therapy. And the idea was that my husband and I were going to go together. And the first day he doesn't show. And I'm like, where are you? And he's just like, I just couldn't do it. I'm so sorry. I'll come tomorrow. And I'm like,
Mm.
well, it's okay. He didn't come because I actually had a really good session. And then the next week he didn't show up. And I'm like, I don't think you should come. I think that I've got too much that I need to unpack, because it was interesting. The first day, I expected to go right into like marriage stuff. And she said, what part of you needs you right now? And I said, I called it my feminine fire. Like
Yeah.
I felt so cut off from my femininity and my sensuality,
Mm.
and because I can't feel the lower half of my body, like that includes sex,
Yeah.
like things that I
Yeah.
used to feel I couldn't feel, and I couldn't dance, and I couldn't walk in high heels, and like the things that made me feel really sensual and beautiful. And now I'm like, I'm on this cold piece of metal and I feel like it's gone
Mm.
and I've been robbed. And so I didn't realize that there was a part that was shouting very loudly and wasn't getting any attention because I was trying to fix all these other things, when it's like, no, usually the thing that's at the root that we got to really tend to, then that'll make room for the other things to be tended to
Mm.
as well. But I just really like that, because it's usually the part that's been denied for a while. It's the part that's screaming the loudest. And it's the part that just, if you tend to that first, you're just going to
Mm.
have a lot more breathing room.
You were about 30 when your accident happened?
I just turned 30. Yeah.
Gosh, it's like you're just embarking on this new life, right? Like 30.
Tell me
And
about it. I had had this huge dirty 30 birthday party, and like, I mean, I was just on living the dream. And even the morning of my accident, him and I had gone on a hike before the four-wheelers, and we were at this gorgeous like lookout area. And I said, my life is perfect. I said, there's nothing I'd change.
wow.
And no joke, 4 hours later, everything changed.
Oh, Sarah. I thank you for sharing about, with your therapy and being open and vulnerable about that. I too, I find therapy very helpful and healing. And I think many who are navigating through fertility challenges, like we've often felt like, we've postponed our joy. We've forgotten what we like to do, and in Hold On Baby in my book, I write about this because it's like we want to keep the light alive. We want to keep living our life while in the waiting and bringing back those simple pleasures that we often put to the side, thinking they're not really important, but they're everything. Just the simple joys that we maybe used to do as a kid. And for you, I just think, that's so powerful that you were able to like find ways to reconnect with your sensuality and flow and feel that freedom and movement. So I love that.
Well, and I love that you brought up like where you feel this just aliveness. And
Mm.
I even break down, I'm also writing a book, talk about a cathartic process.
Yeah,
Oh
it is.
God. But it's this process of becoming vertical. And I really break down by letter. And the very first step is our vitality. And a lot of
Mhm.
people ask, like, okay, where do I start with like this identity work? And where do I start with, even becoming a speaker or overcoming trauma and things like that? And
Yeah.
you begin by feeling good. Because if you don't feel like it, doing the rest, it's not gonna happen. You can kiss the rest
Yeah.
goodbye. So
Yeah.
I always ask, it's like, where do you feel most alive? Some
Mhm.
people, they don't even remember. I said, well, it doesn't matter if it's been 40 years since you've done it. Like, what makes you feel most alive? And it's, dance comes up a lot, or lifting weights, or gosh, I used to feel so alive just going for a run in really cold. I had this friend, she loved running during like super cold temperatures. She liked her ears getting all hot, like
Mhm.
cold. And I'm like, that sounds miserable to me, but more power to you, girl. But it's just asking yourself, where do you feel most alive,
Yeah.
and giving yourself permission to push pause on the rest of the world for a minute so you can go and do that. Because I am a much better mom when I feel good. I'm a much better business owner when I feel good, much better spouse when I feel good, like all the
Yeah.
things. And if we're trying to, it goes back to Kuleana, if we're trying to fix everything else and everybody else before really tending to ourselves, it doesn't work. It will
Mhm.
always fall short. And I am guessing when it comes to fertility, and the women I do know that have, it starts to become this stress and this thing to put on the checklist. And oh my gosh, are we, doing it at the
Yeah.
right time? And
Yeah.
all the things, when then when they kind of just let go and release and just want to feel good again, think different.
Yeah, that's what I strive to do. Bring back some more of the fun and the play and the joy. It is such a regimented process. I know you don't know IVF, but it's so medical. And what I strive to do is really be a space to introduce new ideas in the energetics and spirituality and like, and being an occupational therapist, you've had OT. It's like these activities that bring meaning and joy in our everyday. Like, let's add that into our life as we are creative beings and we want to create life. And you being a creative artist in your own right as a speaker, and we're all creative. We're all creative. And so with women who want to tap more into that creative energy and inner power, like it does start with us, and we can tune into those again simple joys to bring back the fun and the play. Like that's the energy to create from.
Yeah, and that's the feminine, right?
Yeah,
The feminine
yeah.
is flirty and creative and a sense of flow and all of that. And I will say that I think that we are able to do that more the more safe we feel.
Mm-hmm.
So like when we have just a safe space, we're able to let go. And so asking yourself again, where do I feel the safest? Who are the people that I feel the safest? Who brings it out of me? And maybe it's going somewhere where no one knows me that actually will make me feel more safe to just let go. Like whatever it is. I talked about dance a lot. I had a dance instructor there in Maui, and she does aerial silk dancing.
Love it.
And we had gotten together through a mutual friend, and she invited me for coffee, and I didn't really know what was going on. And she sits me down and she said, okay, I've got a vision for a show, a dance show. I was like, okay. I'm like, I haven't danced since I've been injured. What's going on? And she said, I have a vision for a show in which there are aerial silks and all these things going on above people's heads, and you can't tell who has a disability and who doesn't. And I was like, well, this sounds cool. And she said,
Wow, love it.
but I need to know what your body can and can't do in the silks so I can prepare for it. And so we would go once a week. It was her, and then I called in my physical therapist who was totally game for it. And we literally just played. There was no expectation. There was no schedule, no structure to it. It was, let's see what you can do. And let's see what we can create together. And there was this safety of just, we were literally there to discover. And I will tell you, oh my gosh, I feel like I just came alive in that studio. And even every time I go back to Maui to visit, I make sure I get a session with her. And it's a very feminine experience. I really recommend aerial silk dancing to everyone. You feel so feminine, yet you feel so damn strong. Like just, oh, it's such a cool thing.
I love it. No, I want to go try that now.
Oh, you make it a must. It's
Okay.
so fabulous.
Yeah. And we need both energies too. With the masculine energies, there's a doing too. We can't just, kind of float through life, although we'd like to sometimes, but it's almost like it takes this aligned action. And I'm really glad you brought up the fact of like being safe and feeling safe to take the risks. I've heard you talk about that. So having safe people around us, like who we're surrounding ourselves by around, what kind of things are we consuming? All of that impacts us.
Yeah, that's a big one that I use with my speaking students, because if they don't feel safe in my presence, I try to really emulate what that dance instructor did to me of, let's discover, let's see what is really waiting to come out, what you really want to speak on. And so when we do that, we create a really safe experience and safe environment, then they actually feel safe to take those risks. And I think, and I can't remember again where I'd heard this one, but those little sayings that stick with you.
Yeah.
It's talking about how our standards equal freedom. Having more standard for yourself of, what am I willing to do? What am I willing to eat? How do I treat my body? How do I do all these things in a way that actually gives me freedom? So I have standards for working out. I have standards for my nutrition. I have standards for what I do with my body, because it gives me more freedom out in the outside world, because I'm stronger. I'm able to do more things. I'm not afraid to, tell people how to help me to get my wheelchair in someplace. Like, having those standards will give you
Mm,
more freedom. And so just think about that. Whoever's listening, whoever needs to hear this, of where are you not having high standards for yourself,
mm,
that's going to give you more freedom in the long run. And so
yeah.
when it comes to the regimented things, when it comes to what you must do, it's about having a standard. And you can go back to your iconic self, name her, give her high standards, like give yourself a true north to look up to. And the very first thing I do with all my clients is, what's your iconic identity? Like, let's create them. What do they stand for?
Mm,
Describe them in total clarity and detail.
mm,
Give them a name. And now you get this little package to carry around with you of, what does my vertical blonde need right now? What does she need to do?
mm,
What is required of her? How does she respond in these kinds of situations? And it gives you a new sense of standard for yourself. You do it because you love yourself. That's another one too, of, I used to have things that I felt like I needed to do because I hated myself, right? I need to lose weight because I hate myself for carrying extra weight. Instead of, I need to work out because I love myself and I love my body enough to take care of it in the way it needs. So
mm.
very different energy going on in the body, being told to do
Yeah.
something out of shame versus out of love.
It's like the whole I need to do this versus I get to. I share that with clients all the time. It's like we get to work out or we get to move our body because it feels good or we get to eat healthy. We get to do our shots, even though it's not something fun we want to do. We don't, but it's like one step closer. It's part of the process for IVF to have
Absolutely.
our baby. I believe it's like, okay, this is part of it. I get to do this. I have the opportunity. Let's reframe that, right?
And you get to decide how the experience is going to feel. You know
Mhm.
this about me right now. I'm dealing with a pressure wound that is having a very hard time healing, and we're going through quite a process with it. I've got a wound back on since I've had it for about 4 months. I mean, it's just a wound that has just been a little stubborn, yet it has taught me so much. And I continually ask, like, what are you here to teach me? And that I also get to choose my experience of it. I chose to eliminate stress in my life to help myself heal more. I chose to, change nutrition a little bit differently as well. I also have to do daily hyperbaric treatments. I go into a glass tube for 2 hours a day. I don't get to take anything in with me. I can't wear makeup. I can't do all these things that make me feel very much myself. And I'm given a TV that I can watch movies on.
Mm,
And I there's two chambers in there, so I watch the people next to me and they watch mindless movies over and over and over again. And I've changed it and turned it into my meditation pod. I do 2 hours of meditation every single day. I get to choose my experience of
mm,
it. I get to choose whether I enjoy it or whether I am, hating life because of it. And uh, I feel like I've never felt better. And all of my standards around how I'm living right now are really resulting in high energy and
mm,
joy and a lot of peace and a huge reset.
mm.
So I get to decide what my
Yeah.
experience of it is.
Oh, this is gold. It's true. We get to decide. Power of
Yeah.
choice and choosing. You talked about getting quiet and what these struggles in this patient time of waiting is teaching you. There's a lot of waiting in fertility challenges and IVF, a lot of waiting. And I'm a big believer too in getting quiet, asking for guidance, listening for the answers, listening to our inner knowing. Like we're let's gift ourselves that space of quiet because we don't do that enough.
We don't. And I think these moments are absolutely um, almost a forced moment for us to do that.
Mm,
Should we choose, right? Should we choose to embark on the adventure of it? And I think too many women, I'm really a firm believer on this. I think too many of us women are very busy, concerned about everything else that is being said around us, or how we're showing up, or our relationship to the outside world, that we have quieted or absolutely put on mute our inner knowing and our inner voice. And
Mhm.
sometimes it will do things in our bodies to make us pay attention. And I think that we are seeing a lot more um, medical things going on that are really, I believe the body holds the score. I believe
Yeah.
the body is holding it, and
Yeah.
some may believe it, some may not, but it's a firm belief of mine that
Mhm.
even my wound, it is right on my sacrum. And I keep saying, like, okay, there's something around my sense of security or safety
Mhm.
or sense of stability that is needs to be tended to. Otherwise, this would not be where it is in the way that it is. And so I
Mhm.
think our bodies have a really interesting way of making us listen if we've
Mhm.
chosen not to listen for too long.
Mm.
Not to say that we are causing anything in our
Yeah.
body,
Yeah.
but that we have more ownership over it than maybe we think we do. And
Yeah.
I love that you call it that inner knowing. Hawaiian
Mhm.
calls it your na'au, your deepest inner knowing, your seat of thought. And I will often put my hand right on my belly, right under my rib cage, of just like reminding myself, what do I need to hear? And even as speakers, I teach this to my students a lot of, because the biggest fear with speaking is that you don't know what to say. And people are all up in their head about remembering what to say or memorizing it or knowing what
Mhm.
to say. And it's like, no, you're not going to hear it in your head. Sorry, you're going to hear it down in your gut, because that's real. So you got to get really in tune with your body. You got to speak from your body. You got to speak from the gut. You got to get out of your head into your body and really listen. And then we get to magnify that.
Oh, I appreciated that tip you gave me too. Like before I was doing my first talk and we were messaging back and forth and you said, no, don't go back through your journals and look for those specific moments. You know them and just go in, get quiet and they'll pop in your head. So I appreciated that.
The right one will come through.
Yeah.
And then the more we practice that, the easier it
Yeah.
becomes, right? Of
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, I already know this.
And I
You're
think as we're saying, I think as we're saying, we need the quiet, but we also need some music. And I know you're a big fan of Macklemore.
oh, my baby, my
Will
honey
you
buns. I
will you
love my
share about
macaroni.
that? Because I mean, when you went to his show, you've probably been to many. I've never seen him live, but um, in the audience, he picked you out. Your energy stood out. Share about that and just the power of people feel us. People can
Oh, they
sense.
feel you. And it
Right?
was the best. I'm so glad we got it on video. It's on my Instagram. People want
Yeah.
to check it out. But I'm
Yeah.
so glad it got on video, because I'm like, he just completely confirmed everything I teach.
Yeah.
Because I so I got our tickets, me and my girlfriend. I take the same girlfriend to all my big concerts, Brooke.
Oh, good.
And
Uh-huh.
got the tickets in March. That concert was in October. And I called her up and I said, my boyfriend's coming in town. I'm like, Macklemore's coming. She's like, oh, I'm there. And we had just seen him. He opened for Imagine Dragons, which was our previous
Oh,
concert together. And so
yeah.
we were all about it. And
Yeah.
we got the tickets in March. And I said, okay, first things first, we got to go thrift shopping. We need big old fur coats. Like I
Oh
said,
my
"Look,
God.
I'm getting on stage." And
With the tags on, did you leave the tags on it? Kidding.
my God, I should have left the tags on it.
That's okay.
Amateur, Sarah. But Brooke is, everyone needs a Brooke, because she's like, of course you are. Of course you're getting on
Mm.
stage.
Oh,
She
yeah.
completely
Yeah.
understands the
Oh,
manifestation.
yes.
So
Yes.
leading up to it, I just knew it. I was like, I'm getting on stage with Macklemore. There is no way this is not
Yeah.
happening. We got
Yeah.
these huge glasses at the thrift shop, big old fur coats. We show up, and I was like, we got to get there really early in line, because I need to get first in line, because it's all general seating with my wheelchair. I don't know where we're going to be and all the things. We get there super early. We are like roasting in our fur jackets, sitting outside, waiting to go into the place. And the security guard comes up. He calls us forward. He says, you guys are going to go in first, because once I open up the gates, like it's going to be a mad dash. So we go in, and lo and behold, the ADA, like the accessible seating, is literally up front in front of the barricades,
Wow.
front row seats. And my girl and I, we just go nuts. We dance so hard. I know every word. I mean, I am ultimate. I love Macklemore. And then it comes, and I'm like, I think it's coming, Brooke. Like, it's coming. She's like, I could feel it too. And
Yeah.
there was a dance off. And so they called two people from the audience up on stage to have a dance off. And I'm like raising my hand right here, right here. And what I didn't know until afterwards is that everyone behind me was pointing at me like her, because
Oh my
they
God.
see me going nuts this entire
Oh
time.
my gosh.
And so they pull me up on stage. The security guards like lift my wheelchair up the stairs. I
Wow.
dance off my little heart and for like 30 seconds. It's a quick dance off and dance. It's so fun. And then Macklemore says, "This is what life's about right here." He said, "I felt you from the very first song." He said,
Mhm.
"It's your energy. And thank you
Ah,
for gifting all of us your energy." And I just thought, that's freaking rad.
I
Like,
got chills. That's
so,
it. That's it.
so yeah.
No. Oh my gosh. Well, I want to
Take
go to a
it back.
show of his with you. Oh my no,
I still haven't washed my shirt that I wore that night. Get that sweat on me.
oh my gosh, Sarah. Just I love talking to you so much. You have so much wisdom and your heart and energy. Obviously, like it just pours through. I will share the video, but for those listening, like just Sarah is incredible and just want everyone to go check her out and follow you because you're so inspirational and I'm
You.
just grateful to be connected with you.
I'm so grateful as well. We've had some really cool conversations already, and I'm so, so happy for it. And my favorite kind of DM is when people message me with their new iconic names. So if you're
Oh,
listening and you come up with your iconic name and what they represent, I would absolutely love to hear from you. You can find me on Instagram, Vertical Blonde. I'm Vertical Blonde across the board. So I even had a client. I was like, I don't even think he knows my real name. He just calls me VB. So yeah, I go by that too.
oh my gosh. Well, I adore you. Thank you so much. And yeah, we'll talk again soon, I hope.
Awesome. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.